Well, thank you, Lynn, for that kind introduction. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and I pay my respects to the heritage and customs and traditions that are passed down from generation to generation. Well, good afternoon. Thank you. I am delighted to be here in my role as Managing Partner of Henry Davis York, and as Lynn mentioned, HDY as we're commonly known. As Lynn mentioned, we are a leading Australian law firm. We have offices in Sydney and in Brisbane and in Canberra. And for 125 years almost, we've been particularly focused on the government, the financial services and the infrastructure sectors. And as Linda also mentioned, we have held the gender equality citation from the WGEA for the last 6 years. And I hope you can tell that we're very proud of this achievement. I'm personally very proud of the achievement as the managing partner of our firm. But also I'm very proud of that achievement as the father of 2 young women who are about to make their way in the world, and also as the father of 2 young men who will be doing exactly the same thing. But to quote Liz Broderick, gender equality is still the unfinished business of the 21st century. And I'm acutely aware that we cannot be complacent in relation to the issue of gender equality, either in our firm, in our legal profession, or in the corporate Australia community more broadly. And while progress has undoubtedly been made, albeit too slow and too little, as we've talked about today, we are still a long way off from cracking this issue. And I'm sure most of you in the room share my frustration that this is taking so long. I couldn't believe that statistic of 170 years. That is truly unbelievable. And those of us in the legal profession were issued a very timely warning by Libby recently when she addressed the Women Lawyers Association of New South Wales, where Libby talked about the drain of talent from private law firms like ours. People who are young women, or not so young, and men as well, who are leaving private law firms like mine, looking for jobs in government or in-house in corporate roles, and they're leaving because they see that as being a better opportunity to be able to balance their professional and their personal lives and their roles and responsibilities in those 2 factors of their life. And that drain of talent continues to this day. And as the managing partner of a law firm that employs over 350 people, 200 of which are lawyers, that is a very worrying trend indeed. I'm sure many of you in your organisations also face losing some of your talent for exactly the same reasons, and that's why this is truly a burning issue. I firmly believe that unless and until we give our men permission and the ability to have more balance and to take a more active role in their personal lives, that 170 years will remain the time frame that we're talking about, and this simply cannot be allowed to occur. And really it's a challenge that we face on a more fundamental societal level, because as Libby was talking about, we're talking about challenging some very deeply ingrained societal norms here, ones that are very hard to reverse, as any kind of behavioural or cultural norms are. But we simply must do so, and we have an important role as employers to help reverse that trend and to really challenge and tackle head-on some of those societal norms. And like I'm sure your organisations, Henry Davis York, we work very hard to have a supportive and equitable culture. And we're very proud to have a number of excellent gender equality initiatives and programs and policies in place. And we've done some good work in this regard, we've made some good headway, which we're proud of. But in our firm, and I dare say in our profession, the gender gap at partnership level is the biggest issue that we face as an organisation. And our firm has set a very robust target to try and reverse that trend as we head towards 2020. And we do that for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that 60% of law graduates this year, and for some many years, are women. And that's the balance at the entry point of firms like mine and other firms. And that balance stays the same as they progress as young lawyers, and they learn that, how to be a lawyer. They get promoted to become a senior associate or a special counsel after maybe 4, 5 or 6 years. Again, still between 50 and 60%. but it drops off sharply at partnership level. And that's a trend that's continued. And I know for a fact, and I was at a managing partner forum recently, a week or so ago, where we talked about this very issue. That's a statistic that's being played out amongst most law firms. And of course, the case for having greater gender diversity at the partnership level is absolutely beyond dispute. But I dare say many of you are grappling similar concerns amongst the senior leadership ranks of perhaps your own organisations. And of course, it's not the why. We all know, we all get why it's important, why this has to happen. The real issue is the how. How do we address this? How do we tackle that issue? How do we reverse some of these societal norms and have gender equality in our organisations? Programs and policies have taken us so far, and they are important and they remain important, but real and meaningful cultural change must be led. Leadership is critical. Leadership at the very top of your organisations and right through your organisations. That is the only way, if you have leaders walking the talk on this issue, that is the only way we're really going to shift the dial in relation to gender equality, in our case, particularly at the partnership level. Unfortunately, there is no silver bullet, and it will take some time. So what have we been doing at HDY to try and find this holy grail, or to try and reverse this trend? We've identified 5 areas of real focus that we think will best enable us to try and shift that dial, where if we really focus our energy, it'll have the most positive impact in relation to achieving gender equality. So we look at how we attract people to our firm. What attracts them? How do we attract people to our firm? How do we attract a diverse group of people? Retaining talent, critically important, as I said, particularly between that senior associate and partner level. Learning and development, why is this important? You know, why is it important to have this? How do we move people along the curve? Critically important is leadership, as I mentioned, obviously the culture of the organisation, which of course starts with the leaders. And we're very proud. We've got a lot of great policies and programs in place in relation to our attraction and our retention and our learning and development. And these are really important. And we've made headway in that regard, further enhancements of course, but this has been a good thing for us. But the leadership and the cultural part is critically important, and I'll come back to those shortly. What I'd like to do now is just talk about 3 practical initiatives, just to share our insights about what's worked for us at HDY and perhaps what might work for you or is in fact working for you in your organisations. The first is pay equity, and we've heard Libby talk about pay equity today and the importance of pay equity. And HDY's remuneration strategy has always been about supporting an equitable workplace in relation to how we pay our people. But yet, a firm with those core values and those core principles, when we first conducted our gender pay equity analysis, we were absolutely shocked in 2010 to realise that we had a 17% gender pay gap in favour of men at our firm. Now, I was personally shocked about this, and we thought as a firm, this simply can't be right. How has this been allowed to happen, given the core principles of our firm? But we just decided it was very important to take immediate action, so we measured it. We did that in a very deliberate way. We brought in an expert remuneration consultant to work with some key leaders, some key partners in the firm, some of the key stakeholders, and our people and development team to devise a strategy to close that gap year on year. And as a WGEA Pay Equity Ambassador, I can assert categorically you must simply get the data. So I recommend that to you all if you're not doing that already, which Libby and Lynn have both touched on. You need to know what the data shows. You need to be very transparent, whether for better or worse, what that data shows, and then commit yourselves to doing something about it. And that's what we did. And over the subsequent years, we closed that gap from 17% to 4% this year. And I think in one year, we actually got it down to 0. And we remain committed to hitting that 0 target. And again, it's led by myself and the partners of the firm. Lynn and Libby also talked about flexibility as a great enabler of gender equality in organisations. And we at HDY, we strive for a culture where flexibility and flexible work practices are just part of who we are as a business. Our environment's built on mutual trust and respect, two of our core values, and again, these enable flexible work practices to really become part of who we are. And we've been leveraging flexible working arrangements as a business enabler and as a retention strategy, frankly, since the year 2000. And over the last 16 years, we've refined and monitored and improved our practices and procedures in this regard. It's been a journey though, it's taken some time, but one of the single biggest events, significant developments that occurred in that journey was to appoint one of our people in development team, Justine Knight, to be our flexibility manager, tasked with the job of developing and providing the right advice and the right framework, the right policies and processes to enable flexible work to just become part of how we operate at HDY. And it's been a very successful initiative for us, extremely successful in fact, and in fact it has now become just part of what we do. And how have we done that? What we've done with that framework and with it being led from the top, we've provided a very safe environment for people to have conversations. Justine's helped us have an open dialogue in relation to flexible work opportunities and also how you make it work in practice. And again, it must be led from the top. So I also adopt flexible working practices. I try to work from home half a day or a day a week. I've done that for the last year or so. And interestingly, I actually adopted that in response to being at a WGEA workshop last year, where I was actually asked that question about, well, Michael, that's all very well, but what are you doing about it? And I was very embarrassed by the limitations of my answer. So I thought, well, I need to try this. I need to role model this in my firm to really show it's okay. The managing partner works flexibly, so I can have a dialogue about that as well. It's not always easy and it doesn't always happen, but I remain committed to being a role model of flexible working arrangements. And as the phrase goes, you can't be what you can't see. And now I can see both the benefits but also the challenges of working flexibly as well as being a role model. And next, our working and parenting program. That's been a very successful initiative for us. We partner with a fellow law firm. We collaborate with one of our competitors. It's been a very successful collaboration, and it works really well for us and for them. It's a program that's facilitated by an external expert, and really what it is, it assists, it was focused initially on assisting women in their transition back from parental leave back into the workforce, and to give them the confidence of combining those working and parenting responsibilities. Very well received, great success, excellent feedback, so much so that our female colleagues said, you really need to open this program up to the working fathers of our firm and the other firm as well. And that's what we did. So we've developed our Working Fathers Forum with the aim again of working with them about what that looks like, balancing work and parenting responsibilities and looking at what there might be that's unique for fathers in particular around some of those societal norms and challenging those as well. And again, that's been very successful, very positive feedback from those working fathers in our firm. That's a very brief snapshot of 3 initiatives that I commend to you that have really worked for us in really helping us shift the dial and to have more gender equality in our workplace. But we're not done yet. So where to from here for HDY? As I mentioned, the single biggest thing facing us is that drop-off in gender equality between senior associate and special counsel and appointment to partner, and it's a very significant drop indeed. And so the Diversity and Inclusion Committee that I'm very proud to chair and our board has tackled this issue head on. To help us address this, we did engage the assistance of a gender equality expert who recommended some best practice approaches and really helped us to set a realistic and aspirational target for our firm. And this involved 3 steps. We did use, and I recommend to you, the WGEA checklist and calculator to help set our gender target, which is available to all. This was crucial in helping us to develop an aspirational but yet realistic target for our firm. And we identified those five key levers I talked about before: attraction, retention, learning and development, leadership and culture, the ways that if we really focused on those 5 things that would help us shift that dial. But what we also did was have a very robust and honest look at ourselves. What was working well? What wasn't working so well? Where were there opportunities to improve as a business on those 5 levers? And how do we do that to really accelerate our journey towards gender equality? And I think we've done pretty well in relation to the programs and the policies and practices I talked about. We've had some success. But unfortunately, in the scheme of things, that's the easy stuff. It's what we do, and I dare say what all of you do in your organisations around leadership and culture, really challenging those ingrained societal norms that will make the key difference. And in our case, will really determine whether we succeed or fail in hitting our gender target by 2020 and sustaining that into the future. And very simply put, the buck stops with us as the leaders of our firm, and myself in particular as managing partner. This means all of our partners and all of our firm leaders not only actively supporting the idea of gender equality, but getting themselves behind the actions we need to put in place to actually achieve gender equality, and there is no substitute. It will require some education in our organisation of those who may not be quite as far along the curve as we are, to educate them about the importance of this as a business enabler, and frankly, something that's aligned with our core values as a firm. And it will require some bold decision-making. Some bold decision-making about who we hire and how we hire. Some bold decision-making around the KPIs and the targets and goals that we put in place for our people. And some bold decision-making about how we approach progression in our firm. And right now I'm very focused on setting some goals for our leadership team in relation to how, through them, we will achieve our targets. It will not be an easy goal, and we know it will be challenging. But I can say with absolute confidence that the partners of Henry Davis York are absolutely committed to achieving gender equality in our workplace. All of us in this room are across the business case for achieving gender equality. We all understand it's both a business enhancer and, quite frankly, just the right thing to do. And I realise that I'm very largely preaching to the converted here today. But if I could just leave you with 2 thoughts, reflections based on our experience at Henry Davis York, they would be these. 1, you must lead from the top, and you must make your fellow leaders accountable as well, remembering that change isn't always easy. It takes a degree of bravery and it doesn't always feel comfortable. And 2, the importance of role modelling. This helps level the playing field. It's important to role model this from the very highest ranks of your organisations, giving your men as well as your women permission to take a more active role in their lives outside their careers, and using flexibility as a business enhancer, not a business inhibitor. Well, thank you for listening. I do realise I was preaching to the converted, but thank you for your attention. I hope these insights are helpful to you. It's certainly those 3 practical initiatives have been very helpful for us on our journey towards gender equality, and it just remains for me to wish each of you and your organisations all the very best on your respective journeys on this very important issue. Thanks very much.